All right, it's Tuesday, July 22nd, and I continue to read and wonder my way through Matthew's Gospel. Today we're in a new chapter. It's chapter 20. Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 to 16, which is, well, it's a parable and it's a meaty one. And so who knows whether we'll spend just today or tomorrow on it too. I don't know. Yesterday we heard about what I refer to as transactional faith. This is where Peter was asking Jesus, "What do we get? We've given everything up to follow you. So what will be our reward in that?" And then Jesus talked about in the renewal of times and thrones and all sorts of stuff. Also said that the last will be first. Many of the first will be last, and the last will be first, was what we heard. And that's how the chapter ended. And now we move into a new chapter and a parable. So let's see what happens. Matthew 20, 1 to 16. Jesus is speaking. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for denarius for the day, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And he said to them, "You also go to the vineyard, and I'll pay you whatever is right." So they went. And when he went out again about noon and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And at about 5 o'clock, he went out and found others standing around. He said to them, "Why are you standing here idle all day?" They said to him, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You also go into the vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to the manager, "Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and going to the first." When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received a denarius. Now, when the first came, they thought they would receive much more, for each of them had also received a denarius. But each of them also received a denarius. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, "These last worked only an hour. You've made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." But he replied to them, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous?" So the last will be first, and the first will be last. And there we go. Hmm. So last will be first, the first will be last. Here it is again. We just had it yesterday. It comes up again, this time in the context of a parable that really bothers lots of people. And to me, this is the quintessential parable. It gets under your skin. It gets you where you live. And it makes you wonder and it makes you think. And it's just and as I said, sort of in the preamble, I am I just going to do this today because I could do some more wondering about this tomorrow. I wonder about this parable all the time. And I can remember in a previous congregation where I was in a much more in a rural area where most of my congregation were either like farmers, some teachers, GM workers, worked in the automobile industry, um, and I'll tell you, oh, farmers hated this story. At least the ones I can remember. When people come, it's like that's a horrible. Like they just really didn't like it. And I find a number of I don't want to be too sort of uh, I don't know I don't want gender generalization, but a lot of men really don't like this parable. I'm not a farmer, but I am a man, and I get why we don't like it. And that's the point. I think we're not supposed to like it. But the simple truth is, when we've done a lot of work, it really bugs us when people who haven't done as much work get the same thing we get. Doesn't seem fair. I worked harder, right? I went to school longer. I did more labor. I got up earlier. I showed up. I did everything the boss asked. This person showed up the last minute, barely did anything at all, and they're still getting what I got. That isn't fair. The world is supposed to be fair. And you wonder then why? Why would we say that? Why would we somehow think that the world is supposed to be fair? What's the thinking on that? The world is supposed to be fair. So let's take God out of it for the moment. Let's just say the universe, reality is supposed to somehow what? Be fair, be balanced. If I struggle here, I should benefit there. That in the end, you and I should get the same amount of privilege, the same amount of joy, the same amount. Is that really how that works? Because if you use that as your theory, then you can look around at somebody who's suffering and say, well, then they deserve to be as happy as I do. Or if we're going to be fair, I deserve to suffer as much as they do. Because fair is just that it is equal for everybody. So it would be fair if the people who showed up last only got paid a tenth. But then fair, because everyone showed up, I also now pay you a tenth. Well, that's not fair. I did all the work. Well, what wouldn't be fair is you made an agreement, and I need to keep up that agreement. You said you would come and work for a denarius. You came, you worked for denarius. I'm giving you a denarius. That's the deal. That's not about fair. That was a deal that we struck. That's a contract that we have. Now, your contract that you have with me has nothing to do with any contract I have with anybody else. Well, no, it has to be fair. Well, then fair is I'm going to pay everybody less. The universe in and of itself has no obligation to be fair, has no mechanism to make it fair. So if I bring God now into the universe, oh well, God should make it fair. Again, when is in your experience of the faiths, particularly through the expression of Jesus, when has God ever been fair? Because I would suggest to you that God is almost never fair. God is generous. God is kind, forgiving, loving, and that's not fair. So, what happens in my experience is what fair is when I get what I need, what I want, and nobody gets more than me. That's that's what I consider to be fair. Um, it comes up all the time if we're talking about justice issues and we're talking about privilege. And I'm not privileged. Everybody's got privilege. Oh, but I don't. Well, okay, fine. So those people get to do that thing, and I can't do it. Well, that's not fair. That's reverse racism. Those people can use that word, but apparently I can't. That's not fair. I mean, fair is if I could use it too. Why? How does that how does that work? All I hear in that is that you're angry that somebody has something that you don't. Why is it that you should get it too? If they're having pie, everybody should get to have pie. Um, but you don't like pie. That doesn't matter. If they're getting pie, I should get to have it too. But you don't need it. You don't like it. You don't even want it. You just don't like the idea that somebody's getting something that you don't have or that you don't have access to, and it infuriates you. And to me, this is what Jesus is doing with the story. This is what the parable is constructed to do. Because in the parable, the manager is instructed to pay them in such a way that the ones who work the longest will see the others get their money. I mean, you want to do this easily. You get the workers who showed up first thing. You pay them off and say, all right, see you later. And then they leave. Then you pay the next guys, you pay the next guys, you pay the next guys. So nobody sees what anybody else gets, nobody in another category. So as far as they know, as they walk away from the field, everybody got paid fairly. But the manager wants to challenge that, and the parable wants to challenge that. And we are invited to challenge that ourselves. What does fair actually mean, and why do we think that that's a thing? Why would we think God is fair? God's not fair. It hasn't been fair in my experience. At least not to me. God has been overly generous to me because I have done things in my life. I have neglected to do things in my life, all of which deserve a level of punishment and I've skated on some things. I've been let off scot-free. I've been forgiven when, frankly, people have forgiven me things that I wouldn't forgive myself. God forgives me in ways that I don't forgive me. God's the one who encourages me. So God has never been fair. And of course, the other piece of this is that every one of us who hears this, okay, I shouldn't say every one of us, people like me who hear this, well, we're pretty sure we're the ones who showed up at first thing in the morning, right? Right? We were there at the beginning of the day. And we're the ones who worked all day. It never occurs to us that we might be the ones who showed up a little later at 9, or the ones who showed up at noon, at 3, or 5, or even later. No, 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 not us. No, no. Every one of us is convinced that we're the ones who did the work, which is also amazing. I mean, you've heard the expression, about being born at third base and assuming you hit a home run because you got home. No, your distance was shorter. No, no, none of us, I think of ourselves as starting from third, second, or even first base. No, no, no. Each one of us at the plate, each one of us hit a home run. Each one of us has done all of the work. Nobody got a shortcut. No, 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 no. We never believe that. We're always the one. So we're always being hard done by, which again is this attitude that somehow the universe is out to get us. Things aren't going to be fair for us. This parable challenge that you're like, oh, come on, man, think about it. Think about it. And you can say all you want about, well, I never had slaves. I didn't run a residential school. I've never done anything racist to this group or to that group. I had nothing to do with colonialism. You may not personally have had anything to do with any of those things. I got it. But you have benefited from them. At least some people have. I'm one of those people who have. I have benefited from colonialism. There are those who have suffered greatly because of colonialism in North America. And then there are people like me who have benefited from it. I didn't do it, but I did benefit from it. I own property. I benefited. I was raised to believe that if I'm in trouble, a policeman will always help me. I was raised to believe that, and in my experience, it was always true. That's not everybody's experience. That's not everybody's truth, but it is mine, reasonably so. No, I didn't create systemic racism. I didn't create the attitudes but I benefit from them. There's no way in the world that I showed up at work first thing in the morning. Absolutely not. I showed up after lunch at some point. I had a whole lot of work already done before I showed up. I get a whole lot of benefit. I do not have to put the effort in that other people do. And by the way, nobody in this parable is blaming me for that, right? But it's the ones who are getting mad because they feel like they're being ripped off. Nobody's being ripped off here. We all think we're doing the hardest work, even when we're not the ones working the hardest. This challenges us. I think also, and again, I've preached this a bunch of times, and every time I come at it, there's another thing that happens. I also want you to imagine, and no, let me not go there yet. I'm going to go there in a minute, but no, no. But first, again, this idea that I've worked harder than everybody else. It's not like everybody else avoided the work. It's not like the word went out, hey, everybody show up at 5 a.m. We're going to start working. And some people went, I'm not showing up at 5 a.m. Skip that action. No way. I got stuff to do. I'll wander in about noon and I'll make it look like I'm working. That's not the story. Everybody was looking for work. Hired some people at the beginning of the day. A little while later, we went and hired more people. It's not like we went to them and said, hey, would you like to come to work at noon? And they said, nah, we'll come at 3. No, no, no. Everybody was available and wanted to work. Not everybody got the opportunity to work. I think that's also significant. We look at those other people and go, yeah, they had it easy. They didn't choose to have it easy. And by the way, easy was they were waiting, desperately hoping for work and getting nothing. And some people do know what that feels like, and others don't. And there's a great gap because of that. There are people who would desperately love to have a job, not a better job, a job. There are people who would love to have opportunities, not six to choose from, just one, maybe two. Just have an opportunity to show they can do, just give them a chance. There are those who get all sorts of chances, all sorts of opportunities all the time. There are others who just are just they're just waiting for that spot. And every moment they're waiting is filled with anxiety. As far as I know, everybody who got hired after the first call, first thing was a great sense of relief. Their anxiety lessened. Okay, I'm doing something right now. Thank goodness I got something to do today. It's a very real thing. They weren't lazing about, but we think they were. And of course, this thing I was going to get to a moment ago, this in this for me is also there is a criticism here of a whole economic system. This is harvest time, right? There should be work for everybody, and yet there are people not working. How is it possible that in this village surrounded by vineyards, this agricultural community, how is it that there isn't work for everybody? Well, weirdly, there is work for everybody because the landowner keeps going out and getting more people. So there is still more work. I don't know whether he was assuming that other farms would come, other vineyards would come and get the workers, and then they just didn't. And they figured, I don't know, that, well, I've got 12 workers, I'll just work them to death rather than have 16 workers who just work really hard, or 24 workers who work a fair amount. No, 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 I'll just work one group of people to death. There's something wrong with this system. In the time of harvest, there should be work for everybody. When the water rises, all the boats should lift. When things are good, that should be good for everybody, not just for the landowner, not just for the rich. I think that is making that criticism right there because the fact is he goes out looking for workers at the end of the day and there's still people standing there. Why are you still standing here idle all day? Because no one has hired us. There should be work for everybody. And then, of course, comes the other piece, which also has to do with assumptions and how I want what I want. If, in context, a denarius is considered to be a decent day's wage, all right? It's what we would call a living wage. I don't know if it's a thriving wage. It's a living wage. So if you got paid that denarius, you can feed yourself, you can feed your family. It's a job worth going back to. You're probably not going to be buying property anytime soon, but you can make that work. It is a living wage. So, some people agreed to work for a living wage, to do a day's work for a living wage. And the lender hired them. That's great. I'm getting my living wage. Fantastic. Now, other people came along later in the day, not because they didn't want to work, but because they just simply weren't hired. They get hired when they're finally asked, and they show up, and they also get paid a living wage. Now, you say, well, that's not fair. The person who worked 1/10 should get 10 times what the person who worked the least, right? The person who worked 1/10 should get, sorry, the person who worked 1/10 should get 1/10 the pay. So the guy who started at the beginning of the day should be getting paid, say, 10 times more than the one at the other end of the day who didn't work nearly as much. All right. I mean, that would seem to be the way that works. Um, the thing is, as the landowner, I can't afford to pay everybody 10 times the living wage. Can't be done. So that economy won't work. So to be fair, you can have your living wage, but those other workers are now going to have a not living wage. So they're not going to have enough to feed their family. They're not going to have enough to pay their rent. They're not going to have enough to get by. They were working for work. but they didn't get any. It's not that they were avoiding work. They were trying to work. They just didn't have the opportunity. When they got the opportunity, they seized it. They worked as hard as they could for the amount of time they were given. And so for that, they're given a living wage. So your desire to be paid fairly would mean that they're not going to have a living wage. So your sense of what's fair, what makes you feel good, means they don't feed their kids. Now, if that parable isn't speaking to you today about what's going on in the world, then you and I are reading it very differently. Um, there seems to be a lack of concern for everybody having a living wage, much more concerned about me getting what I believe I deserve, and I am better than you. I worked harder, or I'm smarter, or whatever it was, doesn't matter, but there's a thing that makes me better, and because I'm better, I should get better stuff than you get. That's the big the big pull. That's what it is. Instead of how does everybody have enough to enjoy their lives? There's something wrong with this. There's something wrong with the economy of this community. There is something wrong about the attitude of the workers. There's nothing wrong with the attitude of the landowner, the one who, in this situation, I do think is God. God is generous. God keeps promises. It's us who get small minded. It's us who resent generosity. Why should we let those people come into our country and take our things? Your things. Hmm. Anyway, I'm going to let it go there because I can tell I'm about to get a little bit political, and I needn't. Um, so for now, I'm just going to offer a prayer and we'll carry on. Let us pray. Loving God, thank you. Thank you for parables that invite us to wonder, challenge us to engage. Thank you for the many ways that this parable can speak to us. Thank you for the many ways that this parable can speak to others. And as we listen to others, as we share our thoughts and feelings, God, we thank you for that cacophony that allows us to not only hear each other, but also begin to hear you, hear your word. God, as your word emerges, may we be drawn to it. May we grow in faith because of it. We pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, and in the Holy Spirit. Amen. That's enough for me today. I'm still wondering about it. I got so many other things happening in my mind with this parable. So many. I could do it all again tomorrow. Probably won't, but I think I could. Anyway, whatever you do today, I hope you spend some time wondering. And I do hope you come back tomorrow. Till I do see you, God bless you. Please know that God sees you, knows you, and loves you. Whether you showed up for work at sunrise or showed up towards the end of the day, please know that you are loved. And that love doesn't just sit with you. No, it moves through you into the world in amazing ways. You share God's love in all that you do. So thank you for being you. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.